Belize Watch. Knowledge of the past, impacting the present, building the future.
Alejandro Vernon died on February 3, 2023. Vernon was one of the Toledo District's foremost politicians. He served as an area representative and mayor. Our Belize Watch team recently sat down with Vernon's son Michael as he reflected on his dad's life and his dedication to the development of Toledo. We will have that conversation after we hear from our partners, DeBarry, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, the Belize Tourism Board, and Shell Belize Limited.
Savor every moment.
Experience our country. Go the extra mile.
And just dive in.
We are Belizean travelers. Are you?
Shell V-Power with 3 times more cleaning and friction-reducing molecules. Go well. Go Shell.
We are DeBarry, offering you great products, good service, and of course, the lowest prices in the entire country. Visit us in Belize City, Belmopan, San Ignacio Cayo, Orange, and now in San Pedro, La Isla Bonita. DeBarry. Get more, pay less.
In the late 80s, we had malaria in the thousands. It has been a constant decrease up to now that we have reached elimination phase.
It is a very proud time for us in Belize to say that we've had 0 cases since December 2018.
Ha estado bien duro, bastante trabajo, pero gracias a Dios lo hemos logrado.
For our country, it's a great achievement. I must thank our people who have made this possible.
Whether it be through mobile clinics, whether it be through the malaria program, through voluntary collaborators, through community health workers, the ministry has always had a presence.
We were just like sharks, piranhas. The moment we hear about a case, so we go immediately and attack it.
To reach here, it's not just the government, it's not just the program, but it's a unified effort, the input from everybody and all the stakeholders.
We plan to continue to work hard and try to target as much fever cases as possible to stay malaria-free.
Cases that we've had during or that last 3 years up to now has always been imported cases, and these cases were detected early and treated. Definitely a whole investigation occurred, and this was all thanks to the surveillance system that we have set up in our country.
We have different organizations that can come together and we can contribute to keep this 0 cases of malaria here in Belize.
What we need to do is not let down our guards and be able to continue the good work that has been happening.
I believe that what we're seeing currently is a testament to the arduous work, the commitment, and also the resilience of our people.
This is a significant achievement for Belize, and in maintaining 0 case for malaria is helping to reduce the impact on our people's health.
Here in Belize, with all the difficulties we have and the challenges we have, it's our hearts that keep us driving to keep our people safe.
We are, as a country, committed to ensure that we can keep Belize malaria-free. We now need to ensure that the entire region is also malaria-free.
It don't matter what part of the jewel you come from. You da you and me da me. But guess what? All are we the one. See what I mean?
I'm with Michael Vernon, who is the son of the late Alejandro Vernon, who passed away a few weeks ago. And we're going to dedicate this show, Mike, to the memory of your father, who is a person I knew very well. He served this country outstandingly because he was very much devoted to Belize and the future of Belize, the present and the future of Belize, I would say, right? Well, maybe we could say from the past, the present, and the future, because he played a key role in the past. So, Mike, thank you for agreeing to talk to me about your dad. But before we get into it, let's talk about you first. Let's get to know you first, and then we start talking about Alejandro.
Right. Okay, my name is Michael Sidney Vernon, and I am the 4th child of Alejandro Vernon and Iris Elihia Vernon ni Paulino. And well, I was born in Punta Gorda in 1973, and attended St. Peter Claver Primary School, and from there I went to SJC Junior College in Belize City and continued my other studies dealing with basically competency-based education. Today I'm working at the IT Vets as well. My dad did what I would say, what a Belizean patriot would do. He was born in Barranco.
He was born in Barranco. No, not in Punta Gorda, 1937. Barranco, 1937. Right. And for those who are viewing us or listening to us, let's also say that Barranco is the most southern village in Belize, right?
Right. And for those who know as well, you know, Barranco produces so many great Belizean patriots, I would say, especially in the field of public service. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of Garinagos as well that have come out of that small, very tiny community, including the well-renowned and the Palacio.
And Dr. Palacio as well.
Now, recently, Dr. Palacio has also made his name along in the medical fields, doing what he has done, and he has also achieved. We have other people as well who have been, I would say, unsung heroes. But back to my dad, our family started basically back in France, in Calais, and they migrated over to England, to Dover, England, across the English Channel, and then they got to Jamaica. And from Jamaica, the brothers, they split up. That is the most that we knew about the family, taking us back.
We're talking of great-grandparents, right?
And his name, in turn, was also like my name. His name was Michael Vernon. But today, if you look up what Vernon means, you know everybody's last name. Certain things, if you were a locksmith or you were a blacksmith, then your name might be Jeremy Smith or something of the sort. But Vernon also meant that this was your right-hand person. This was the person you looked to at the times of need, in the times of darkness and stuff like that. You know, so now you look at the Vernons moving over from Jamaica. I have relatives that we have never contacted, but we always knew that they were there in a place called Maypen, Jamaica. And the other brothers, they then migrated over to Central America, because then, you know, it was all dominated those times, coming over to the Bay of Honduras, right? And then Alfred and the others went over to Guatemala, Tito and the other guys went over to Honduras, and then my dad, my grandfather, who was Benjamin, Samuel Benjamin Vernon, he came over to southern Belize. He landed up in Barranco, and that was where my dad and his other 13 siblings were born.
So Samuel Vernon is well known too in the southern part of Belize, not only in Barranco but also in Punta Gorda. So before we go into the life of your father, let's look at your grandfather, Sam Vernon, because that's a very well-known name here in southern Belize as well.
Right. So what my grandfather did, he was also a businessman. And when they came out of Barranco, they were looking at, you know, what could be done, what was happening. And you only had this one connection to Belize. That was the Heron H. Yeah. That boat going in. That was the only form of transport.
Only form of transportation, Heron H, you know. You miss the Heron H or the Maya Prince, you're in trouble.
You're in trouble. Your mail, your everything, that was it. You know, today we could make the contact, we could call you on the cell phone, we could do video chat, we could do all of these things. But those guys on those days, you had to wait on the mail. And the other form of getting your produce out, the south, if you remember well, we were below the Sibun. So my grandfather and, you know, a couple other business people in the community were like, we need to find a way how we could get produce out. Everything was basically controlled by the captain of the boat. So getting our produce out, everything was seasonal, stuff like that, was all dictated by the captain on that boat. So they decided they had to make a difference. And my grandfather was also a member of what we call the Rosicrucian Order. My dad, coming up in the future, was a member of the Lions Club, right? But these organizations were also worldwide. He could write, you could read, and remember going up to Standard 6 was like going to UB. In those days, some of the information, right? Your education, you knew about the continents, you knew about worldwide, you know, different areas, different categories, genres, careers, at a very early age. So he was into the reading and the writing. And he became a member of the AMORC, AMORC. They still exist today. You can go on YouTube, you can look it up. And it's a very prestigious organization that deals with businessmen and, you know, philanthropists across the world. They were never limited by a particular religious order. Today, you might know that many of the wars in this world has been because of religion. So, even though being brought up as a staunch Catholic, my grandfather, my dad, as well, they studied the Rosicrucian Order as well as astrology. In fact, one of the most daunting things that ever happened to us as a family was that my grandfather predicted the independence of Belize, and he missed it on the astrological chart by 2 months. He was that good. And that is because we don't have a...
And he was not here on this earth physically when Belize got its independence, right?
That was pretty sad.
He predicted that long before?
He predicted it probably like 4 years before it actually happened. Right? So 1981, people were thinking about the Cold War between the U.S. Gorbachev and Ronald Reagan. People were thinking about Bob Marley had passed away, you know, but Belize, along with the Honorable George Gilbert Price, Emeritus, if I should say, was very close to my grandfather. And he had him doing a lot of logging back in the days. So my grandfather was into logging and exporting logs to Honduras, to other parts of the world, and parts of Europe as well. He also, for some who might know, you might go to the Lands Department, one moment in the history of Belize, my grandfather, Benjamin Vernon, had the concession for the entire country of Belize. So then he moved on to become a senator and the rep for the Toledo North as well.
Yeah, because he joined the movement with the Right Honorable George Price, you know, to develop the South. So he was like the person here in southern Belize, right?
Right, and politically, business-wise, and that was something that today we still are looking forward to. Belize is still trying to find its way out, being a very young country. And like what he stated, he said, man, you know, America, England, they have us by a couple 100 years ahead in the race. We need to jump in the race at a level whereby that, you know, if you remember well, Mr. Rene, one moment, I think the Belize dollar was equal to the US dollar. I think it was 1978.
No. Actually, it was 1950. 1950. Up until the midnight 1949, the Belize dollar was on par with the US dollar. And then the colonial government devalued the Belize dollar that same night. And when New Year's came in, the Belize dollar was $1.40 to the US. And that is what sparked the beginning of that independence movement in 1950. And as a matter of fact, just as a little aside here, as we know, that is why we have 50 leaves on that wreath on our flag for the year 1950. The 1st of January 1950, when they took to the streets, saying, my dollar ain't a dollar no more, give me back my dollar. And that movement just caught on, and then the political side of it came in, and that led eventually to the independence of Belize in 1981, and hence those 50 leaves on the flag. Right. But that's a little bit of history aside. So, and since you brought it up, I just decided to expand into it.
It's a beautiful piece of segue that we could have done, because a lot of folks don't know why we have those leaves on the flag. Everything symbolizes something of magnificence. And that was what my grandfather did along with the great George Price. We had Venanza Petillo, we have the park in the middle of Punta Gorda town. Miss Ben was a great affiliate as well. You know,
I knew your grandfather, and I knew Miss Ben, right? And I know your grandfather was a pioneer in the political movement along with Mr. Price. That's why I asked you to go into a bit into his story. And I also remember Miss Venanza Petillo, who was one of the first senators, you know, and female senator in those days. That's right, Miss Venanza Petillo. Yeah, she had a restaurant, didn't she?
Right. She had a small restaurant, and that was one of the first that we had in Punta Gorda. So when people talk about the tourism today, and we're sitting here in Bear Suites, imagine. Bear Suites got all these awards recently as well.
Yes.
I mean, the hospitality that you get when you come to our country, Mr. Ren, it's something that is beyond. Like the great Aldous Huxley said, when he comes to British Honduras, in his time when he came here, it was beyond anything he had ever seen in this world. So again, that's the same thing my grandfather saw, same thing my father saw. So he went out to Mexico to study at the end of times. My father.
You're talking about your father now, okay.
To become an air traffic controller. Remember, no Punta Gorda have no airfield, no airport.
But before we go there, let's just finish with your grandfather. And then we pick up on your father.
So we had the 13 kids, and
he had 13 children. So Alejandro is a sibling.
He's the youngest of all the 13 siblings.
Alejandro, your dad was the youngest of the 13 siblings.
Right, and he had his other older brothers and sisters. Well, you know what happens.
But why in Barranco? Why was he born in Barranco if Sam was here in Punta Gorda? He used to move up and down.
Right. The thing with it was that, because remember when my grandfather came from Europe, their thing was in carpentry. They went to woodworks. And then Europe has this great taste for hardwoods, wonderful woods, special woods. So when they came over, they actually got to the Caribbean, another generation. When they got here, by the time my grandfather was growing up, he knew the value of what these different type of woods were that we had in Central America. Rosewood, the mahogany, the bullywood. We have the Santa Maria, the emery. They all have different categories that they use in different structures in Europe. Today you could go in Europe and they have different materials in different, especially cathedrals that have come from British Honduras. Right? Even in the House of Parliament, one of the gavels, I believe, is out of mahogany as well, came from British Honduras that they used. And my dad wound up there. He went to the House of Parliament when he became the area North representative at the time when he was in
Toledo North.
Afterwards. Right.
So he represented Toledo North for a while.
Right. And then after he did Toledo North as the area rep, he went into mayoral for town council.
So your grandfather ran for politics here in the Toledo district, right? When in the early electoral politics, one of the first representatives, if not the, I think he was the first, was he?
Was the first.
The first electoral representative, I think, for the People's United Party at the time.
Right, exactly. Right. And that was when they decided that, you know...
it was he and the late Charles Martinez, right?
Right. Then the late Charles Martinez came along with my dad afterwards.
After that.
Right. And what my grandfather, like, he did, he was the first one. And basically, he was the contact for Belize at the time, Belmopan at the time. If you wanted a visa to go to the States, he was the person you had to go and see. So he was also, you know, the person in charge of monetary or financial and stuff in case anybody wanted to leave, you wanted to do business on this side of the country. He was the person that you would go and look for. So he was getting older in age. He was getting older in age. That was when my son, his son, yes, my dad now, Alejandro, came into politics.
But out of the 13, Alejandro was the only one interested in becoming a politician?
Right. He was the only one. The others were into stuff like, for example, I think it is Capital Energy now that has the rights or the concession to continue exploring for oil in the Cricasarco area. Okay, my older uncles, Eduardo and Robert, and these guys work along with the oil companies. I think it was called Exxon Mobil back then. And they were exploring these parts of Belize for oil. And these guys work along with those companies during the tenure that they were existed in Belize. We still have the demarcations of where these manholes and these wells are, that in the future, because they say that oil ripe, just like wine, the longer it stays, better it gets.
So you think the oil is still there? You think the oil is still there?
Everybody believes it in the South. Right now, we know that we're going to go ahead, Mr. Rene, but our future generation need to hold on to this land. And that is what my grandfather was looking forward to. He said when they stepped into the area and the shoes, the boots touched the ground and the thing came up at their shoes, you could smell petroleum, you could smell. But according to, of course, you know, the scientists and all the guys that
determine the quantities.
They determine the quality at the time. And they stated we have a couple decades more. But it would not be during their lifetime or my lifetime. But it would be there as long as Belize holds on to it, that we're in that oil bed. So we have a future ahead of us.
No. Going back to your father now, the youngest of 13, becoming interested in politics, but that interest did not start right away, right? So let's look at him as he grew up. Let's look at his growing up years, what you know of his growing up years and what he told you growing up, because he moved obviously from Barranco to Punta Gorda, right?
Right. So growing up in Barranco, of course, they learned a lot about the Garinago culture. Right. It's a Garinago community, and they were like, you know, I wouldn't consider outsiders, because with Garinago, it's this general love. You know, it's this whole entirety of everyone being a part. And I think that was how come part of it, that mentality came along when he found out about the Rosicrucian order and the Rosicrucian movement when my grandfather had gone to the United States and he had gone to Europe. And today we hear about stonemasons, you hear about the lodge. All these groups have their powers across borders, across passports. You know, engineers, architects, politicians, bureaucrats. They're all people looking forward to uplift and create, you know, something better for their people in the country that they live. And that was what my grandfather was believing in. And when he met George Kittle Price, that was where the whole ball started for my grandfather and then my dad. Because every time George Price came down and whatever campaign he did, whatever movements they did, my father was along with my grandfather. And then I was along with my father.
Okay.
So we
did not go into politics?
I had a situation about why my mother really didn't like the idea about my getting into the politics, because my dad had this controversy with the PUP when he separated to form a third party. And then today now, we see where all the third parties are coming into play into Belize. But back then, it was before the time. A third party was seen as a threat. It was seen as something totally negative. It wasn't something that we could have brought to the table because, you know, how come you're gonna leave the PUP now and then move into your own agenda? But what was happening is that something that today I think is also lacking. We don't have public meetings anymore. No. And I think you remember that well, Mr. Rene Toledo. I mean, PG had what you call the Rice Plaza. At the Rice Plaza, you had the public meeting.
Public meetings were all over this country.
Panel, and that was my dad and my granddad loved. You had a panel. This panel consisted of everyone of importance of public service. You had the fireman, you had the head of the hospital administration, all the different parts that played a very important role from the government. We'll sit down and have a public meeting with our community. We hear their voices, and from there, the area rep, could be my dad or my grandfather at that time, can then go to Belmopan, stand up in the house, and lobby with the speaker and the leader at the time, George Price, that we could work out something in the budget for the people of Toledo and Punta Gorda. And it would be in the interest of the people because that was the report they got from the people. It's not something that comes from an individual and they're not putting the people into consideration. And when you have these public meetings, you will have hecklers. You will have people that will always be the negative 4%.
You had the cheering crowd, you had the hecklers too.
Hecklers, and they were there, and they would, they would throw out all of these, different political rhetorics and stuff, which was one of the main interesting one was at the end of the day, was his third party movement, said the Toledo Progressive Party and stuff. And that was part of it, along with my grandfather, along with my dad. It was until my dad's time that they really started to push the Southern Highway because we didn't want to have a problem with George Price at that time because everything was below the Sibun. But we were part of Belize now. We were part of British Honduras now. So we wanted to do, commerce. We wanted to do business. We wanted to do everything. We wanted to have fair trade. We didn't want to have only one boat dictating the pace of your sales. If you could get the road open, then hey, why not? But the reality was the Pan American Highway was supposed to pass through Halacte, Toledo. It's not supposed to pass through Cayo, and that is the designation that was given by the United Kingdom with Guatemala at the time. Hence what we were asking that the border and the highway be open behind here, not only because of that, but because of the geographic structure of the country. It can take the heavy loads of container trucks that can come to whatever port that will be, exiting Belize. The thing is, Toledo would have gotten income from the tolls, because you have to pay tolls to keep maintenance of the highways, right? So passing through this district, you pay the toll. When you pass in Orange Walk, I think you pay a little fee at the toll bridge sometimes, just to pay a little thing. But big commercial trucks coming through Belize, coming through Toledo here, through the Halacte area, the Petén Highway, would have cemented Belize a little bit on the international market. And that was what sort of they were fighting for. Why stifle the rest of Toledo from the rest of the country with one boat that can only bring limited amount of goods, so much times for the month? That was holding back our economy and the development of our district and our entire country. And that was what my grandfather was looking forward to. And then, in turn, my father was looking forward.
When we come back, Vernon speaks more on his dad's political career, including the controversy surrounding his break from the People's United Party. We take a break to hear from our partners, the Barry, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, the Belize Tourism Board, and Shell Belize Limited.
Savor every moment.
Experience our country.
Go the extra mile.
And just dive in.
We are are Belizean travelers. Are you?
Shell V-Power with 3 times more cleaning and friction-reducing molecules. Go well. Go Shell.
We are the Barry, offering you great products, good service, and of course, the lowest prices in the entire country. Visit us in Belize City, Belmopan, San Ignacio Cayo, Orange, and now in San Pedro, La Isla Bonita. The Barry. Get more? Pay less.
In the late 80s, we had malaria in the thousands. It has been a constant decrease up to now that we have reached elimination phase.
It is a very proud time for us in Belize to say that we've had 0 cases since December 2018.
Ha estado bien duro, bastante trabajo, pero gracias a Dios lo hemos logrado.
For our country, it's a great achievement. I must thank our people who have made this possible.
Whether it be through mobile clinics, whether it be through the malaria program, through voluntary collaborators, through community health workers, the ministry has always had a presence.
We were just like sharks, piranhas. The moment we hear about a case, so we go immediately and attack it.
To reach here, it's not just the government, it's not just the program, but it's a unified effort, the input from everybody and all the stakeholders.
We plan to continue to work hard and try to target as much fever cases as possible to stay malaria-free.
Cases that we've had during or that last 3 years up to now has always been imported cases, and these cases were detected early and treated. Definitely a whole investigation occurred, and this was all thanks to the surveillance system that we have set up in our country.
We have different organizations that can come together and we can contribute to keep this 0 cases of malaria here in Belize.
What we need to do is not let down our guards and be able to continue the good work that has been happening.
I believe that what we're seeing currently is a testament to the arduous work, the commitment, and also the resilience of our people.
This is a significant achievement for Belize, and in maintaining 0 cases per malaria is helping to reduce the impact on our people's health.
Here in Belize, with all the difficulties we have and the challenges we have, it's our hearts that keep us driving to keep our people safe.
We are, as a country, committed to ensure that we can keep Belize malaria-free. We now need to ensure that the entire region is also malaria-free.
It don't matter what part of the jewel you come from. You da you and me da me. But guess what? All are we the one. See what I mean?
No, your father, you said before he entered politics fully, he started to be an air traffic controller. I think you were saying that earlier. So let's take it from there. From him, how old was he when he decided to go on and become that air traffic controller?
He was very young. He was very young. He was in his early 20s when he went out and got certified. And his dad told him, son, we're not seeing any way out. Otherwise, you go to school and then you find out that you have all these opportunities in the great wide world. And today I think that is something that is very important. A lot of schools, they don't have a library anymore. They don't even have a set of encyclopedias. Set of Encyclopedia Britannica. Those were some of those. We didn't have the internet, Mr. Rene. So when my dad was growing up, that was what he saw for the world. He had to go and read. Then he put it in his mind and said, man, why Belize can't be? Why British, we can't be with the rest of the world? Can we get up there? And not only that, he was the witness of, ambassadors from the US. You had people from England coming over to his dad's house when growing up, and you listen to these conversations from these diplomats and these great men and women with vision for your country as well as what is happening in the outside world. And that was what I used to love with the international news, because indirectly, whatever happens out there trickles down to us. We cannot take that out of the big picture. So some people tell me today, I don't listen to news anymore. I said, really? I said, wow. So whenever you have a consternation that comes to you now, and then you say, hey, this is happening, I go like, all right, cool. But you don't listen to news, right? So that is where we are now. I think we should be a little bit more, even though we have all of these new different categories of media. You have it on your phone, you have it on your tablet, you could access this whenever you want, but nothing like when you bring out factual, reliable, sophisticated, believable news, like what you have been doing over the last couple of years at Love FM.
No, back to the air traffic control officer, because you still haven't told me how long he stayed as an air traffic control officer. Did he get a job? How did he move on from that?
Right. So he was trying to do stuff here in Punta Gorda. His father had the original bakery, the first bakery in Punta Gorda as well. And they started
Vernon Bakery.
Vernon Bakery. And they started it, they had the bakery. And they employed so many folks as well. Then, remember, they also were doing logging. So where the present police station is, that is actually where they're logging the materials that came in. All the lumber that was already manufactured was put out so that they can be shipped out to Belize City and to different countries here in Central America and the Caribbean. So he told my dad.
How long? Did he ever work as a traffic controller?
He did. He was over in Mexico for a while, but he wanted to come home. Right. But Belize didn't offer that opportunity at the moment.
We only had Stanley Field Airport at the time.
And Price Barracks, he was over there, everything. And then, everybody heard about the Spirit of St. Louis, where Charles Lindbergh had landed that plane. My dad was always into all of these great things too, but it didn't happen because we, as a country, we weren't developed that way. So he studied but couldn't get the employment. So he went over to Puerto Barrios in Guatemala, right over here, next door, 36 miles away from Punta Gorda, because they had a moving facility happening at the time. Had a lot of planes moving. I think if you remember Pan American Airlines and all of these other airlines back in the days. So he worked over there for basically 3 to 4 years as an air traffic controller, right, internationally. And, he had a boat that when he came to Punta Gorda for holidays and stuff, he would go to the Keys. And he took my mom out when he was courting my mom to the hunting key range, we call Sapadillo Range today, that we have a conflict.
How did you meet your mom?
Okay, my mom happened to be a teacher, and she was working in San Antonio village at the time. And he was already into politics around that time. And he happened to be the mayor of Punta Gorda. And he took a fancy to her, and she already had my older brother, Anthony Paulino. And my dad came along, and they spoke, they talked a lot. She was interested in the same thing as well, as long as her dad, the Paulinos, in developing Punta Gorda and getting it together. Along with the Martinezes, along with the Arzus, along with the Palacios, the Enriquezes, all these families, they wanted this whole, the whole town to develop. And so she fell in love with my dad, My dad, was a bit younger than her, but, they worked it out, and they got married. And from there, I had my older brother, Clifford, was born. Cliff was born. And so he said, I want to do some more things, and, we're going to go to the States, and let us see what's happening in the States. Let us see what's happening in the States. And
but let's stick to your dad now, right? So he worked in Puerto Barrios for a while. He got himself he used to come over here, get a boat, and take your mom out. I guess courting, but that mean he met her while he was still in Puerto Barrios before they got married.
When he came back, he met her when he came back.
Or when he came back from Puerto Barrios. Then he got a boat. Okay. I'm just trying to follow up.
He got a boat because remember now, he was born in Barranco. Then people are like the sea, and people love the sea. I love the sea, Mr. Ren. I know you love the sea too, Mr. Ren. It's so beautiful, man. And my dad was always fascinated with it at the same time. Then remember that my grandfather, who had come over from my great-grandfather come over from France at the time, they are into this.
His father.
Okay. And also by George Price. Now he started to get involved in politics. He like he told us, he said, man, we had to set up the first gas station. That was when they got in word along with, I think it was a Texaco brand at the time. And then established the first gas service station right here in Punta Gorda. Today, well, no, it's Uno, but he did it first. And then he wanted to continue his political career. He didn't want to sit behind the desk there and work at the gas station anymore. The gas station also had a marina. Today, well, you could still see the wharf that goes out with the pumps to service the fishermen. Like I always said, he loved the sea. Grew up in Barranco, Punta Negra. He would never leave out the fishermen. Never leave out the fishermen. That's why he was a great advocate for the Port Honduras area, along with Will at the time. All right? And Will was also some of the other kids that were growing up in those days and would go by the house, by my dad's house, and see him, and then grow up and then emulate him now in the future. So back to it. Yeah, he fell in love with my mom, and like I said, he came back, decided that there wasn't anything for him to really do in the sense of air traffic controlling, and then his dad helped him establish that service station at the time. But establishing that service station made him realize something else. Toledo needed more. We needed more. We needed a lot more. And it wasn't happening for us at that time. So he decided to go into politics full-fledged. And that was when he looked around and he saw what people were going through. He understood more or less some of the measurements that the first world countries and the second world countries were using, on an international level. And my grandfather was, like I said, in the Rosicrucian movement. He was, that was above politics. But it was something that he wanted to help Mr. George Price to help establish sale and marketing. And then my dad went to develop the rice mill in Big Falls Village, the first rice mill here in the Toledo district, to take the farmers' rice.
What was your father doing that?
Under the PUP, during his aspects as the area rep, to put rice thrashing machinery that they got all the way from Trinidad. And these are manual machineries, right? And to thrash the rice, get it all done together. And if you probably remember well, you might look at the Atlas of Belize or some of the old junior history of Belize that says Toledo, the breadbasket of Belize. And that was what was happening, right? And with the technology and stuff that he introduced, along with the agriculture officers and the extension officers, even some people might remember some of them. We had the Mr. Petillo, they called him Promise. We had the late Herman Lewis himself, was also an agriculture extension officer. Some of them I don't remember at the moment. Whosoever remember can help me with it as well. But I will not leave anybody out. If I didn't mention anybody's name, then whosoever knows I didn't do it on purpose. But we had many other Belizeans who went either to Cuba, they went to study in Jamaica, in parts of England, Guyana, and came back to help us with different agricultural aspects that we could have done here in the Toledo district. And my dad, my grandfather, along with Mr. Price, were very much advocates of that, you know. And today I can see whereby in the Toledo district right now, yes, we're looking at it, but again, at the end of the day, it's marketing and probably packaging. To compete with Spanish Lookout is a very huge feat. You know, they are ahead of us by so many years, but at the end of the day, they always believed that Toledo could still come back and do it. You can also remember that they were also the founders of the Rocky Run Rum. They did rum here before it started in Orange Walk. All right? And Cat Landing area where you turn as you come into Punta Gorda there by the beach.
Cat Landing. Confederates you to export cattle.
The World Confederates had that pier set it up so that you could actually export cattle from Toledo district up that side, and that was where we were. And then going more up into Forest Home, yes, then we had the last of the Confederates that had died out, and they have their cemetery there today. We use it as tourism as well. If you know anything about the American Civil War and the effect it had to Toledo that we have today. So, you know, and my dad and my grandfather, before he passed away, they always had business meetings. You know, you have different little associations in the district. Some have died, some started and never did, you know, blossom in that sense. But, however, they left their imprints on the Toledo district.
Your dad did one term for area rep. That would have been in the year 19 what?
The first one for Toledo NERP, that was in, I believe it was in 1960 or 1970.
Late 60s. It had to be the late 60s to early 70s.
Then he did Toledo West. That was one as well. So that would be 1970, between 1973 and 1975.
So he did a Toledo North and a Toledo West. All right.
And then he did 4 years consecutive, back to back sequentially for mayoral. For Punta Gorda.
So he was mayor of Punta Gorda for a long time.
For 12 years, I should believe.
After he left the national electoral politics. But I know, and then he went on to form his Progressive Party, Toledo Progressive Party. But before we go there, I met your dad for the first time, I think it was around 1969, 68, 69. And your dad was, as I recall, the area representative for Monkey River. During the inauguration of the community center, and it was when Monkey River for the first time got electricity, if I can recall, right, for the first time. And also in the community center here in Punta Gorda, they were both inaugurated around the same time. And the roads were still not up yet, right? So we had to come down on boats. And I can recall very well staying at the hotel on Main Street here in Punta Gorda, Isabel Hotel, I think it was. Wasn't that for part?
That was for my uncle.
Yes, I know. And it was for a relative.
Right. It was my uncle Eduardo, right. And then beneath that, he had the pool club. It was underneath the central club, which would have been the 2 pool tables that he had right beside the fish market.
And Eduardo would be what to Lila?
Lila married into the family. Lila is Gino's Martinez, then Vernon. So she married to my cousin, who is my dad's nephew, Mario. When my dad left the gas station, he passed it on to to his nephew by the name of Mario Vernon. Mario had married to Lila. And then Lila, of course, as time went by, she had, the vocals, she had the voice.
She was a great artist. Lila was unique. And let us say that here, that we get an opportunity to pay a little tribute to Lila Vernon. I mean, Lila Vernon was a unique artist, one of a kind,
Right, for the Creole culture as well, she had...
Who said Creole no got no culture? Right.
And she had all this, she have her little museum going as well. And, part of it, like what my dad had said at the end of it was, the beautiful thing is about the music that comes out of the South. It represents Belize, not taken away from any other district. But man...
Lila just a little aside, Lila took all those Creole songs, Ding Ding Walla Walla and everything, and made them into hits, real unique. I mean, a great Belizean.
She worked so great with the three kings, Mr. Peters, and you know, along with everybody. And like what we stated, and like what my dad told them, he said, you know, it's never too late. It's never too late. Sometimes we need to make our mark in history, and that was what he always did advocate when he went around on his political campaigns. I was on a couple campaigns with him back in the days, along with the great George Price, and what they emulated, you know, even, you know, Dean Oliver Barrow stated it when they had the funeral for the great George Price. He stated that, man, I had to take up some of the ideologies and some of the movements that the great George Price did, and I had to use that to do my own political career. And the fantastic thing about it also was that a couple times in my dad's lifetime, growing up earlier as well, Dean Oliver Barrow also represented my dad, because he wasn't really politically affiliated in any determination as the sort, which we'll get into, you know. And when he stated that, it was a beautiful thing. He said, son, whenever you go into something such as politics, he said, we work with the priest to the prostitute. And I was a bit confused because I was young. And I said, but that not something to write. He said, son, everybody in our country has a role. And when it comes to history, even if that person only plays 4 seconds in history, they have a role in history. So we should not ignore anyone. We should always look out for everyone. And that is the duty of a public servant. And I said, Dad, okay, now I understand.
Okay, yeah. Because those are very important words there, because we're here to serve. You know, politicians are here to serve. They should be here to serve, right? And I can remember in those old days, the politicians like your dad, the Right Honorable George Price, David McCoy, and many others, you know, who actually gave of themselves to serving this country, you know, C.L.B. Rogers and men. You might get in trouble if we continue calling names, because you might forget somebody's name, right? So let's pay tribute to all of those who have, especially in the past, who served along in the time of your dad. Like we were saying, we're dedicating this program to the memory of your dad, who and by doing so, of course, your grandfather Sam Vernon, and your dad, who has served as a representative for this area. I met him when he was that representative. He served also as the mayor of Punta Gorda, and then he left and formed his own political party. He left the PUP and formed his own political party, the Toledo Progressive Party. I can still see some of the printed material that the TPP would put out, because I can remember reading a lot of his work, Toledo Star. Right, and he would send me copies of those. So let's take it from there.
Alrighty, so they had a misunderstanding whereby in the house, you know, when you go on your lobby for your community or your district, he wasn't seeing eye to eye with the Right Honorable George Price. It was a very difficult decision. And part of it had to do with the highway. My dad was always one for the highways. And
I still have his document that he wrote on it, but go ahead.
Right. He was a much advocate. And like he stated, man, you know, having traveled to Europe, representing British Honduras as the senators and stuff, going to the United States and all these other countries and meeting with senators and others and so on, seeing the development that is happening and coming back home to see, you know, come on, you know, in our own area, in our own country, I'm not being listened to by my leader, and I'd like to really do something for my people before I step out of office. That was my dad's dream. And looking at the people of Toledo and seeing that every day is going by, every month is going by, everything is business, you know, and the world is moving, and he was very adamant about that. However, when he went to a particular meeting, they had a very fierce exchange of words, and the late Freddie Hunter and some of the others, you know, were on his side along with some other members, and he decided to step down from the PUP. It was a very hard and difficult decision, but he had to do it. And you know, to walk away from your idol, basically, because George was his idol. And I mean, you know, this was the guy that we were on the road to getting independence with and everything. So he came back and, you know, well, he spoke with his constituents, and they decided that they were going to start their own party. They told him, you know, Samuel, you know, Alex, because some people call him Alex. You know, I said, Alex, we're going to do our own thing. And that was when Mr. Anthony Martinez, who is still alive today, became the president of the Toledo Progressive Party. My dad was the general secretary, and Mr. Bartholomew Callis from San Pedro, Colombia, Mopan Maya guy, was the vice president of that party. And since my dad had more the education and the know-how to do the typing, printing at those times, didn't have a computer, and created their own newsletter and stuff, named it Toledo Star at that time, you know, to advocate for agriculture production, for basic public service rights for public servants that work down south, you know, and that was where the whole thing went very, very, very sour. And like in other places and stuff, you know, you have places around, other countries around that are looking at what is happening in your country at the same time. And we had, you know, he had connections. He was already a ERA rep. He was already outside in the international world. And he had advocates that would also support you in whatever causes you had. So while he had the Toledo Progressive Party during those years, he was getting help from outside, which was, you know, some people would look at it in a negative aspect. But at that time, they were looking at it as legitimate, because at the time we wanted to export the produce that we had. If we go back again to the Toledo being the breadbasket of Belize, you know, and if you're going against your own country leader at that time, then what are we going to do with our goods? What are the people of Toledo going to do? So we had to figure out how we're going to do commerce. They had to figure out how they're going to keep their head above water, and at the same time, see how best that they could try to make amendments and try to work things out with Belize City at the time. It wasn't Belmopan yet.
I think we were approaching independence. Correct me if I'm wrong. We were approaching independence at the time. When all this was happening in the 70s, late 70s, and it was, the difference was on the approach to independence. That was part of the difference as well, because he went ahead and he addressed the Fourth Committee of the United Nations.
Right.
I think he's the only other person, non-government person, to do that, to address the Fourth Committee of the United Nations on decolonization.
And he went and he addressed it along with Mr. Anthony Martinez and Mr. Bartholomew from Callis from San Pedro, Colombia.
I remember that statement.
They were all amazed, because remember, these guys don't have any formal education, as in the sense of, you know, what the other diplomats were bringing to the table at the UN at the time. But the level that those guys took when they went there and did their presentation caught the world audience. And
there was also accusations that he was advocating for closer ties with Guatemala, as against the rest of Belize. I mean, I can remember those accusations. I don't know what comments you have of that.
Right. That's something that is pretty sweet. Like a lot of other places, when you grow up in a small community or in a small country, things were like really, pushing. Firstly, remember that his father, my grandfather, one moment had the concession for the entire country of Belize to do logging. So when they left the party, of course, the political rhetoric took off, and George Price had to go into defensive mode and said, no upstart from, South or Punta Gorda is going to, throw my party down the drain, whatever. I will do whatever I need to defend it. And the other guys were like, man, maybe we could work out something with Alejandro down south. We don't need to go down this way. But, the field agents were out. And being a part of the party, my dad and these guys were ready for it. They were ready for it. They knew it was going to come. And it was something that's, kind of sad in some sense. I know that, for example, Mr. Rene, you own land and other people own land. You have a title for your property, don't you? right? So, you know, Alejandro Vernon doesn't have any title for an entire country, I believe. He can't say Belize. That is something that's just political rhetoric and a lot of propaganda that he's going to sell the country lock, stock, and barrel tomorrow. I would have liked to see him.
Annexation, I think they were accusing him of wanting to annex the Toledo district with Guatemala.
He would like to probably move the Toledo district or the entire country, whereby, again, that's something that's a lot of things that...
Well, history has proven different. I mean, we were just going through what accusations were being heard, you know, but history has proven...
They will hurl things at you, you know, whenever you get in a political arena, like we stated before, when you have the public meetings, you have to get ready for the hecklers, you know. So they were ready for it, and, you know, people who knew better, well, you know, it just blew over. And part of it, though, sometimes that I feel growing up, I would say today, I feel sometimes growing up about that same political rhetoric, the amount of money he received by going to court for defamation of character. It's sad. I think Belizeans got to get their act together, get your information, get the facts, the way you always see on Love FM. Get your information. Don't go and just spread things in public. You're going to libel someone. You're going to cause defamation. And $25,000 is nothing easy to play with. And I see a lot of people come and, you know, the old man bad. I go, the old man isn't bad. Why didn't you keep your mouth closed? Get your information right. You should have never done that. You know, and then we get the media, sometimes different newspapers. I also ended up twice during political times trying to print these, again, these old fake false accusations that he's going to sell the country. And I told my dad, I said, man, Dad, is this a bad thing sometimes? He said, son, well, when you go to the bank and you collect, it's not really that bad. It's not that we're doing anything. It's just that, you know, people just got to stop sitting on the fence. Stop being fence sitters. Stop being gossip mongers. And let us move with the facts and keep to the truth, you know, and understand the reason why we did what we had done. And that is the part that we're coming back to. So finally, in 1983, 84, going before the 89 elections, they had a reconciliation between the Right Honorable George Price.
George Price made it up and everything.
They came together, they came to the house. We sat in the living room. It was a wonderful sit down, along with the late Theodore Aranda from Dangriga. I think it was Frederick Hunter as well, senior, and of course the great Florencio Marin from up north. We had, I guess, a spectrum from across the party, across the country that came down south that we could have worked it out. And they did. It was something that they did within, I would say, 9 minutes. You know, to go through things for years, Mr. Rennie, to hold this feeling, this, you know.
5 years, no? Like 4 or 5 years, no? I can't remember how long it was, but...
It was sad, but to see them make up back, it was wonderful. You know, they were at the house, you know, and it was great. It was great. It was great, you know. Like what he said, and they said to each other, said, man, you shouldn't have me walk out. You should have me just talk at the table. We shouldn't have walk out. And that was what I was looking at again recently in the house. Man, we have to stop it. We have to stop it. We have our younger generation looking at us. When we go into that house, we have to be respectful of the house. We have to be respectful of the people that we are representing. We should stop the bickering and the little small trivialities. We have bigger things to do for this country than to go in there and have this trivial little regular, I would say, political consternations that happen just before the general elections. Let's not do that for the entire 4 years. Let's go in the house. Let's bring to the table what our people are asking for. Let's listen to our people, like what my dad had said, my grandfather had said, and the late George Caleb Price had said. And it doesn't hurt to make up. If we're going to go there and hold it for the rest of our lives, it's not going to resolve any matter for this country. We need to show each other that we can live. We need to learn that, Mr. Wren, we will disagree sometime, but we will agree that our relationship will not come to an end. We have a wonderful relationship, but we have some discussions that you and I will disagree on. But that doesn't mean that you and I will be enemies after the discussion. It's just a discussion. Healthy discussion is great, and constructive criticism is wonderful. So I think, like the old man said, and the late George Price had stated, and my great-grandfather stated, I mean, man, there's good in people. We still have a little bit of good left in this world. We should look for the good. Let us not go out, and the first thing we look at is the negative and the wrong. Let us look for the good that we can find in people. Like what my dad stated, he said, there was once a human resources department. I think we should bring back one in the government. Strictly human resources department. Focus on the people. Let's not just focus on the department and see what the department can get done. At the end of the day, it's just the department. What about the people?
We will wrap up our conversation with Michael Vernon after we hear from our partners, the Barry, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, the Belize Tourism Board, and Shell Belize Limited.
Savor every moment.
Experience our country.
Go the extra mile.
And just dive in.
We are Belizean travelers. Are you?
Shell V-Power with 3 times more cleaning and friction-reducing molecules. Go well. Go Shell.
We are the Barry, offering you great products, good service, and of course, the lowest prices in the entire country. Visit us in Belize City, Belmopan, San Ignacio Cayo, Honduras, and now in San Pedro, La Isla Bonita. The Barry. Get more? Be less.
In the late 80s, we had malaria in the thousands. It has been a constant decrease up to now that we have reached elimination phase.
It is a very proud time for us in Belize to say that we've had 0 cases since December 2018.
Ha estado bien duro, bastante trabajo, pero gracias a Dios lo hemos logrado.
For our country, it's a great achievement. I must thank our people who have made this possible.
Whether it be through mobile clinics, whether it be through the malaria program, through voluntary collaborators, through community health workers, the ministry has always had a presence.
We were just like sharks, piranhas. The moment we hear about a case, so we go immediately and attack it.
To reach here, it's not just the government, it's not just the program, but it's a unified effort, the input from everybody and all the stakeholders.
We plan to continue to work hard and try to target as much fever case as possible to stay malaria-free.
Cases that we've had during or that last 3 years up to now has always been imported cases, and these cases were detected early and treated. Definitely a whole investigation occurred, and this was all thanks to the surveillance system that we have set up in our country.
We have different organizations that can come together and we can contribute to keep this 0 cases of malaria here in Belize.
What we need to do is not let down our guards and be able to continue the good work that has been happening.
I believe that what we're seeing currently is a testament to the arduous work, the commitment, and also the resilience of our people.
This is a significant achievement for Belize, and maintaining 0 cases for malaria is helping to reduce the impact on our people's health.
Here in Belize, with all the difficulties we have and the challenges we have, it's our hearts that keep us driving to keep our people safe.
We are, as a country, committed to ensure that we can keep Belize malaria-free. We now need to ensure that the entire region is also malaria-free.
It don't matter what part of the jewel they come from. You that you and me that me. But guess what? All are we the one. See what I mean?
I know your dad stood for that belief in helping people, you know, because like I said, I met him first in 1969, I think it was, 68, 69, somewhere around there, right? 69. And obviously followed his career, you know, and know that he was always an outstanding patriot, an outstanding person who stood up for what he believed in. From what I remember of him, what I know of him.
What he also did was that he liked giving away money.
Oh yeah.
Growing up, you know, people come to the house, you know, Mr. Alejandro around, Mr. Handel is about, no, man, doing a little problem, have a situation, whatever, you know. Mr. Alejandro sent me to the house. My mom goes, what? I said, yeah. Mr. Alejandro said, you have to give me $5. You have to give me $10. You have to give me $20. Because so and so. So my dad comes in the evening, my mom goes, oh no, Mr. come for $20. I mean, yeah, you give her, right? Yeah, thanks, baby. I love you, sweetheart. I love you, my beautiful wife. Alejandro, what we have to do? Because then we need to pay for we bills too. You know, at times, they were like, my dad was like, yeah. He said, okay, it's not like before, you know, your dad, you know, he was doing things. We had a lot of business going on, but it's modern times, it's the 80s now. We're going into a crisis, recession. Remember the time when Gorbachev and Ronald Reagan with the Cold War? But it was, we were being affected indirectly, but my dad was like, yeah, but they got the money, right? And she was like, yeah, they got the money. He's like, all right. And that was one of the greatest things. When he passed away recently, before his 86th birthday, I went into the room with him and we sat there and he looked at me and he pulled out one of those old accounting books, you know, we say bookkeeping. Well, school, we say bookkeeping. Has the ribbon in it, the red and black book. And he said, son, when I leave, this is it. These are all the folks that owe us money. Now that I'm going, you're going to close this book. You're going to close this book. And the other 2 books that for your grandfather, you're going to close this book as well. You know, and I said, Dad, what's going on there? He said, when we did businesses, these are the people that came through, that owed us money. We have people and so on, and others and so on. And this is for Toledo. Because we were born without anything in this world. And what your great-grandfather achieved, my dad achieved, and we have achieved. But we're going to leave this world the same way we came, without anything. We didn't come in this world with a pocket. And I'm not leaving this world with a pocket. And so all these books, you're going to keep them right here. And before you go, you're going to make sure that these books are also destroyed. We're not going to take anybody to court. We never believe in suing anyone. We never believed in going back, whatever. And we have books from many of the different businesses that they have done, from logging, gas station, Besides donating, remember the electricity board, the whole building that they had there, they donated that, the first electrical system in Punta Gorda and the water supply system my dad did during his tenure. And we had so many townspeople that had, they owed the bills, they owed things, not to him, to the government as well. But the sad part about it was why George Price and them was good was because whenever the government, the town council couldn't pay staff and others, then they would go to the local businessman in town, which would be my grandfather. So my grandfather basically paid the town board.
And then if they're in more trouble, then they go to the government.
They couldn't do anything else, and then government needed the taxes and whatever. My grandfather will cover it for the people because the love he had for Belize and for Toledo.
So certainly your family, your grandfather and your father served this area very well, along with other outstanding stalwarts, But we're talking about your father today, as he's just passed recently.
That was just so wonderful, when he told me, he said, son, that there's the book, and that is what it is. And I told him that then I'll just fulfill your wishes.
What are some of the other moments you might remember the family shared together? You can readily recall.
We did a lot of traveling together. My dad liked to travel. Like I said, he grew up in Barranco, Punta Negra. He liked the sea. So he made sure that he got a boat. We had one of the first skips, whatever, with the inboard, whatever, and stuff. And he would take us out as much as possible to the Keys, the Port Honduras area. We have a lot of people that have never been out there, have never seen the Keys, and then again into the interior. We'd go into all of these 43 different villages that we have in Toledo. Like he always said, we have one of the biggest football area categories in the entire country. We have about 43 clubs. We have about 43 villages behind. I think 23 villages actually, but each village have 2 teams. Right? So he said, son, one of these days, we should make it to the nationals, man. He said, Toledo, we have so much clubs. We're supposed to be, in the ranks, And he used to always take teams over to Guatemala. He used to take teams on excursions over to Honduras. Well, mostly into the southern areas here, and the villages and the community look forward to these excursions, right? Because it's good to go and play outside of Belize for a change. A little international match. That was what he did.
Now, your dad passed away a few weeks ago, as we have mentioned throughout the show, and we are dedicating this to his memory. How has the family continued carrying on? Or what's the family like today?
I have one of my brothers, Fred, right now. He's living in Canada, and he hasn't been back for quite some time. But up there at the same time, he also does he works with a security firm, but he also advocates along with some Belizean organizations that we have out in Canada. And he keeps in very close in contact with what's happening here in Punta Gorda at the same time. I also have another one in Jacksonville. His name is Anthony. He teaches at Valdosta University in Georgia. And again, with the same similarity, they all work in different aspects of philanthropy and charitable organizations. They were both in teaching, and henceforth they keep in contact with a lot of ex-students that work in different areas and organizations in Toledo District. They also donate back to the high schools. Recently, Anthony came back and donated an amount of equipment to the Toledo Community College as well. And then I also have Cliff. He lives up in Atlanta. He does fiber optics training, and also he works along with interior designs. He actually originally studied dentistry, but he wound up in the United States, and then when he was out there, he had a change of heart, and then he decided to carry on with that field. I have another brother by the name of Philip. He works out in San Pedro. He works along with the Reef Divers Club that takes out tourists and guests to the reef. Myself, I am a Justice of the Peace. I also work in the public service. I'm an instructor at the IT Vet in Toledo for the last 23 years. And I make sure that I do a lot in the community in different little organizations that works along with the youths, and of course along with the IT vet system that we're trying to work along in education for the last 23 years. I have also the youngest one. He's by right an architect, and he lives at home right now here in the Toledo district, and his services are also available to members of the community who are dealing with whatever construction, building, engineering, and the sorts. He was recently working along on the Southern Highway to the way to Halakte upon the completion, and then now he's doing his own independent work as well. Mom passed away 3 years ago, and may she rest in peace. You know, she was also our first class clerk. When my dad was the mayor, she was also the clerk along with him at that time. And then when they left, they established their own businesses, which was the restaurant, which was the El Cafe restaurant, and then the Shell service station at 14 Mile by the Hulancho Junction was the last enterprise that they ventured in. But that didn't stop him. Before he passed along in the last years in his 70s, he had also worked along with the PUP administration in rural electrification of the Toledo district recently in the 2000s, before Mr. Oscar Requena came into power at the time. He was also working in the area along with Mr. Felipe Koch at the time. And then, of course, they were already in retirement age. And then finally, he couldn't move anymore. He had Parkinson's disease, right? And then he succumbed to bronchial pneumonia in January. He passed away at 86 years old, right? And yeah, he led a full life. He led a full life, and he loved this country. He loved the district, and we couldn't take anything away from him. I always remember his photograph with doing the Sister City with a place named Punta Gorda, Florida. I was amazed. In the 70s, he was one of the first mayors from Belize to go and establish a sister cityhood with somewhere outside. And then I believe that was when, in the late 80s, he became involved with the Toledo Lions Club to do some more philanthropic work in the community. And the last thing he did was to give a piece of land from the family plot to the Toledo Punta Gorda Town Council so that they could have a youth community center. Because, you know, the youths are the next generation coming up. And my dad always had his eyes out for the youths. And, you know, that was the last philanthropic work that he had done before he had passed on.
Now, listening to what happened with the family, why didn't any of you get into politics? Was there any interest on your part, for example, to ever become a politician?
Well,
like Grandpa and Pa?
I had the moment probably would have been some time ago. But that time I had gone to school in Belize City, and then I had wound up at 33 Freetown Road.
I remember you grew up at 33 Freetown Road. I remember very well.
And I met a guy by the name of René Villanueva Sr.
Yeah, and attended school while he boarded at my home while he attended school in Belize City.
Right. And I got a keen interest also into the little bit of broadcasting that I was doing part-time at the time for Love FM. And my experience was so wonderful. It was wonderful with the coaching, the training, and then I met some of the personalities that I had always, hear about on the radio and so on. And yeah, we spent some time together, Mr. Wren. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. Doing the jingles, Terry Garden, the guys, right? And then we went to the Agric show and stuff like that. And then I came back and my dad said, man, he said, don't you want to get interested? Because remember the 89, he had just lost in the 89 because he had just come back with the party, right, with PUP. He had lost to Stanley Osha at that time, right?
Well, I started in 92, so it was like 92.
Now he was like, I'm not going to be in politics anymore like that, so what do you think about it? At the time I was thinking, right, I was like, man, I might go back and run in politics in the South. But then right now, I don't know, maybe I got a broadcasting career, I'm not sure. You know, Love FM, that happened with the takeoff at the ground. You know, Mr. Ren just went to Miami to get the equipment. I felt great.
Those were the early days.
Techniques, yeah, you got you got everything. And then I met a guy by the name of Marlon Obando.
Marlon Dubon.
And then we had Stereo Amor. And from there, we took off. You know, and then my dad was like, Mike, you know, and then I said, no, well, I came back to Punta Gorda and I assisted a guy by the name of Morgan, who opened Wamalale. I guess you had heard about it. They had a short stint, and I took the knowledge that I had gotten from yourself and the others at Love FM, and we started off the Wamalale radio station. And then I went back to do a little bit of studies, but when I came back, I found out that I was going to work in the NGO field. And then I forgot about broadcasting, and I went into the NGO field, and I wound up at Tide, along with Will Mejia. And my dad was a big advocate because, like I said, he met my mom, he had our boat, and Port Honduras was the next big thing on the agenda. Right, and then I went to Tide, and we did biological research. We worked along with the guy James Azueta from Coastal Zone Unit. I think it was Dan Silva at the time who was the minister. We got the place declared along with Will, and we were looking forward to doing some conservation work for the Toledo district along with the Nature Conservancy and so on. So I followed that NGO trend for about 5 years, or about 6 or 7 years, and then I came out back and I went into the tourism industry, where I ended up working as a manager for the now defunct Z-Line Bus Company, which was a rival to James Bus Company back in the days. And I was the manager of the enterprise, the inn at the time. It was called Travelers Inn, which is now the present UB building and facility. Right, I was the manager there for about 2 years, and then I went over to Nature Conservancy to do the research work for the development of Port Honduras along with Will, and then we got that successfully done. And upon completion of that, I went to work over in Guatemala and Costa Rica for 3 years, and then I got the break to come back to Belize, and they found out that they were going to do an IT vet in all 6 districts, and then I applied for the IT vet with my experience, and that was how come I wound up working over at the IT vet here at Toledo at the same time. And from then on, I've been a public servant for the last 23 years.
So you did not adopt the political career nor the broadcasting career. So here you are now.
Sometimes I still do think about the broadcasting. Many days I do reflect about it. Whenever I hear the part that goes about beyond.
Belize and beyond.
I always think about Mr. Ren, because I remember the nights when I used to come in sometimes after I did my shift, and I saw you sitting in the booth with your headphones on, and you're holding over the shift for somebody that couldn't make it. And that was something that instilled in me that, you know, Belizeans have this theory that we should not plan. To plan is not good. But if you look at the rest of the world planned, and the rest of the world has moved on. We have to get over ourselves with that, Mr. Ren. And you did it, you planned, we sat down, you put it together, and you have a wonderful team. And my dad was always an advocate of it. We used to sit down in your lobby at 33 Freetown Road, and he cross the leg and he say, yeah, you know, Mr. Renner used to work with him. Then guys over at the Cartoons building, and I met him in Monkey River. And we sat there, man, and you know, and I always looked at it and I said, Dad, you know, probably if I don't go down that road, who knows, maybe one of these days I will return to broadcasting one of these days. And he said, it's okay, son. I said, sure, I'm looking forward to it. I said, as soon as I get through with this thing, but like with the family, like all the family, like my great-grandfather, my dad, my uncle and my aunts and everyone, yeah, we have an affinity for Toledo.
Yeah, that's right. It's nothing but love, right, that you would have. Yeah, Mike, it's been good to talk to you.
It's been wonderful to see you again, Mr. Rene. It's been so many years, and like what you stated before,
I mean, I come here, often, but I never get to see you. I mean, either you are wrong or I'm not, or you're absent when I'm wrong.
You're busy doing the other thing, and then I'm located in the other direction at the same time, and I come in the evening at 4. So at the end of the day, I'm satisfied with what we do. And like what my dad always said, or my grandfather always said, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
That's right. And that is true.
Right.
That is true. Well, thank you so much, Mike.
So much, Mr. Red.
All the best, man. Good to see you. Good to see you again, right? And I like what you said. If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, and that is true. That's a secret that I think a lot of our young people should learn. Right. If you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, even though you might be doing what you love to do for 23 hours or 24 hours. It doesn't matter because you love what you're doing, so you're not working.
Yeah. There's no such thing as working. And, people look at me and they say, what's the worst 4-letter word you have in the entire world? I said, okay, it ends with the letter K. Then everybody go, oh, wow, I know that word. I said, no, I don't think you know. And then I say, it's work. No, I wasn't thinking. I said, exactly. You weren't thinking about that, but it's work. Right.
The two of them goes together. And love, work.
Right.
LOVE, exactly. WORK, 4 letters each. Right.
Right. And that is where you are. And that is where you are. And that is what a lot of folks have to remember. I remember that part of the advocation, since I'm in the education field, they used to have this thing they call home economics. Right? They don't have it anymore. No, they say life skills. Right? But if you bring the home economics and the correct life skills to the table for your career or your trade, then you should have no stress, duress, or consternation. Like what we said. You'll never work a day in your life if you love what you do.
That's right. And because we love what we do, you know what we always say at the end of one of our shows, right? Exactly. You know it. Belize and beyond. Thanks
for choosing love.
Belize Watch. Knowledge of the past, impacting the present, building the future.
Celebration time. It don't matter what part of the jewel you come from. You that you and me that me. But guess what?